2 photos worth seeing. It is out on PWS. And I hope we're streaming.
Oh, dear God.
Not so sure if we're really streaming. Yes, we are streaming. We're live. We are live now. Which is... And we have already 1 viewer. And so I think let's wait for a minute or so.
Oh, good grief.
All
right. Come on. Oh, here we go. All right. And I am posting it on Luxlet. Let's put this on the bottom. On now. It's a long weekend here. I have an extra day off at work. On now. Reblog. All right. And now we're ready. Okay. So you...
And let's start.
Let's start.
Hello and welcome to inConversation number 16 on May 26th of 2018. I'm excited. We haven't done a conversation for like how long?
2 months, because we didn't do it last month.
So lots of stuff to talk about, I guess. So in case someone's already watching, well, as soon as my face showed up, we lost a viewer. Interesting. And now he's back, or she's back. Welcome to inConversation. My name's Pete. I like pictures with me on the stream. Dr. Fern, Fernando, admin of Luxlet.net, and of course, posting his own photography on qbn-scholar.tumblr.com. And Fern, he's also wearing a cap today. Today's cap day. Apparently, it's cap day. You all out there, you can chat with us live on YouTube, or if you have any messages, if you have any suggestions, questions, if you have something to say to us, you can also, of course, talk with us on Tumblr via the Tumblr Messenger. I brought you like every time. I brought you something, Fern.
Okay, hold on.
Excited.
Okay. Oh, now I'm looking at you on. Okay.
I brought you
Hit
something
me.
because I found this and I thought this is what the inConversation needs, because I have a no button.
Yeah.
You say something that is, like usual, something that I would say N-O. No.
Oh, Lord, that's obnoxious. I like it. No. You get a variety of flavors and you never know what you're going to get. What did it say?
No. For the last time, no.
Sounds a bit like you. Sounds a bit like you. Welcome on the chat, Amy Montico, James Christley. Hello. And say something. I ran out of words. Okay, let's...
Me?
Let me just...
the less I talk, the better.
Well, if you say that, then it must be true. This episode, how do we learn photography? Then why do we focus? I love that one. Why do we focus so much on gear and the opinions of quote unquote experts. Then the third topic, is there a need to learn more about how to talk about our own art and about art of other people, and how to comment on art in an analytical way. And then we have a fourth topic. I think we won't be doing more than one topic today. Naming our photos and or adding comments. Why? And and then there's the fifth topic, and
How much did I write?
a lot. How to get your art out? Is there a value in submitting photos to supporting sites and taking part in photo contests? So that is a lot. That is a lot. You were pretty productive.
Well, but you know why? I think I told you, right? That I which I'm going to start saying to begin with, when I shared the David duChemin's duChemin for his what is it, Master Your Craft course, online course. I posted it on LuxLit. And it was really interesting because someone who's I'm not familiar with at all, but I've seen his work, and we've actually, reblogged it on Tumblr a couple of times, posted something to the effect of, oh, this is for people with no brains and and no hope, and and all you need to do is just pick up your camera and learn. And I'm like, okay, your opinion. Fine. But it was really interesting to me because there was somebody else's comment which I thought was funny. But I did sign up for the course, and it's really made me think in a lot of different ways about what I'm doing. Not exactly, I think, the way he intended, but it's still making me think. And it is affecting how I take my pictures. So yeah, all of these things are actually part of what I've been thinking about recently, because he did talk about, in different ways, all of that stuff. So that's why my brain just went wee, and for any of you who don't know, David duChemin, we have on LuxLit, I think on Let's Talk Photography as well, have shared some of his online videos. He has what is it called? Vision is Better is the name of his YouTube channel, and I love the guy. I have to say, and those are for free. Which is, by the way, one of the reasons I took the course. Now, there's other people on YouTube who I follow, like the Tony and Chelsea Northrup, and others who offer courses, and I am in awe of these people because they not only do their stuff to make money, which God bless them, but they also, God bless them, do a lot of free educational work. So when I see one of them who posts something that I think is going to be useful for me, and if I can afford to do it, and I'm going to hopefully learn, I have no problem supporting them, because they have been supporting me for free for a very long time. I mean, when the decision making for this thing, for my new camera, and even for the cameras I bought last year, the D5500 and the Fuji, were to a great extent helped, to make the decision by what they said. So I think the mentality of oh, they're making money. They don't make any money on these things that on YouTube and stuff. They might make a few cents here, a few cents there. So if they're putting out stuff that's good, that's valuable, and I think it's going to help me, like I said, I will support them. I have no problem, and I'm learning. Again, I'm adapting it. Very Buddhist. I'm adapting it to my needs, but I'm still learning, and it's still engaging me in thinking. So anyway, that's my sermon for this morning. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, these were your questions, right?
Yes.
Another thing, I mean, we before we start with our topics, also like usual, because I still have a couple of questions on the list of photographic questions from our show noter, and so let me see what is still left there. Oh, I like that, because that fits the topics today. What is one thing, in brackets, in photography that you feel is overrated?
Oh. Equipment. I would honestly say equipment. I would honestly say the fixation that we have on equipment. And what is fascinating to me, and I mean, I always believe this whole thing of, you know, a new camera or a new lens is not going to help you take better pictures. And as some of you know, my camera that I had for 5 years was the D50, which by the time I bought it was already like 7 years old, because it was like Nikon's first lower end DSLR. And I took some amazing photographs with that camera. Now that was my baby. Now I have my new baby, and my style has not changed. By the way, this is the camera, and this is the camera that TJ, our staff photographer, and I posted about this, also bought, because all of my, you know, the few pictures I showed him in our conversations, and we both feel the same way. Our styles and what we do have not changed. The quality of the images have changed. The lens that I have is superb. I mean, at 200 magnification, I can see details of stuff from, like, you know, a block away. And it just blows me away. But the type of photography that I do, the enthusiasm I have, my vision to go into the direction of duChemin's YouTube channel has not changed. It's freeing me up, because now, and that's actually what convinced TJ to buy the camera. I can take a shot or photos at 1/30th of a second that are tack sharp, a high ISO, but they're tack sharp, and especially for displaying on the web, there's no noise. I mean, there's no visible noise. It's still a very high quality image. So I think that what is it, gear acquisition syndrome, and the focus on that, and that's why I asked the question about learning and evaluating art, and our art, because I'll admit it, sometimes I'm heartbroken at some of the stuff we share on Let's Talk Photography and LuxLit, and who others share, about things that move outside of that, and nothing. And also sometimes if it's more than 5 minutes, nothing. So I think that is in combination with, and this is my own experience with, and especially today, the fixation on celebrity photographers, and the fact that we are handed this image of in my case, let's say Helmut Newton, because that was the one who first got me interested in photograph. Fashion photographer, almost always black and white, on the often very BDSM, sadomasochistic, violent images. It was the inspiration for the film The Eyes of Laura Mars, which is what I saw, and I went, oh my God, I want to be this guy. And we're never shown what these people go through. We're never shown their 10,000 crappy photographs, as Cartier said. We're never shown how much they had to learn and how much they had to work. Because with the exception of someone like Gordon Parks, who just picked up a camera, went into a place and said, I'm a photographer, I will take your fashion photographs, and they were good, and they hired him. There's work. I mean, Cartier Bresson was not born Cartier Bresson, and Cartier Bresson, again, which is one of the things that I'm saying, going, really, you know, Cartier Bresson studied painting and art and was a man of means. He came from middle class. He came from wealth. All of that. Van Gogh, same thing. You know, Van Gogh wasn't just some poor schlub who was depressed and, you know, got inspired by the angels to paint these gorgeous visions. This man had talent, but he also had training, and then he went on his own, and on and on and on. And we are never exposed to that. And to me, if it hadn't been for digital photography and for Tumblr and for the people like you, Pete, and others who I've learned to share with, and who actually, and also my own background this time in cultural studies, I wouldn't be doing the kind of learning I'm doing now. So I'm fascinated by that. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to talk.
I'm just because we're moving away from a topic to very, very interesting comments on the chat. And first of all, hello and welcome to the chat, Christian Augustin and Lyndon Arden's highlights. And Lyndon Arden's highlights wrote, but better image equals better picture, but not necessarily more interesting picture or more artful, whatever that means, picture. While Christian's reply to that was, well, technical quality and artistic quality are terms we should discern here. Lyndon Arden's highlights reply to that, yes, language matters. Christian wrote, gear is about technical quality, not always, though. And you replied, yes and yes. So these are indeed two terms we should talk about. Technical quality and artistic quality are definitely two different types here, and I think that plays into that quite well. If we say, does gear give us better pictures, and why are people so fixated on gear? Certainly, and that's a thing. I don't believe that even from a quality side that better gear will necessarily give us better pictures. We have to have a certain basic skill. If we have two photographers who are on the same sort of have the same level of skill, then certainly they will get better technically better pictures with better cameras. But I saw it sometimes amuses me a bit when I see, not necessarily on Tumblr, I haven't seen anything like that lately, but on other platforms, when people they post a photo and then they have like a novel of what kind of camera and blah blah and this, and then you say, okay, why do you even post that for this picture? That is just, it doesn't matter, because you can take pictures of the exact same quality, at least if we post stuff like that to the web, with any kind of smartphone today. So why does the camera come to play in these? For me, it's a thing. Is the gear necessary to get that certain shot? I probably wouldn't be able to take a close-up shot of a tiger that jumps in my direction and have with an iPhone. well, probably would have been able to make that shot, but then someone else had to take the iPhone and post the picture. Certainly not me. Then it's interesting what kind of focal length had the lens, which kind of shutter speed was used to get the tiger crisp and clear and sharp. So that's when, for me, gear is interesting. Does it give me something that I can't do with other gear? It's like these videos that I posted lately about these macro tubes. That in that case, I found it interesting that you can really get so close with that cheap gear, like $20 for extension tubes instead of 400, 500, $600 for a real macro lens. So then it's interesting. But other than that, I don't really care for gear at all. My personal
and to me, it goes back to that goes to the question about how do we talk about art. And one of the things duChemin talked about was, it's all well and good to try and understand, like you said, to try and understand for that shot, what did you use? What were your intentions? What were you thinking? How could I do this kind of shot and apply some of that? But it seems to me to get this sort of image that represents what I'm seeing. For example, in my case with art, with urban geometry, because it's not really architecture, or with urban geometry, where I take all these angles and these shadows and manipulate, pictures of the Frank Gehry concert hall, the Disney concert hall in LA. How does that equipment help me make the kinds of images that I see? But the other part that I find that's really, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but connected to that, Christian made a very, I think, very important comment. I think that different types of cameras can have an influence on the artistic quality, or at least on one's own style. For me, it was switching to rangefinder cameras. We have a new oh, David Lichtwelt is on the chat. Hello, David. And he writes, hello there, greetings from Lichtwelt to all of you nice people. We missed you, David. Just saying. So that I think is the point. What can I get out of my equipment in a way that really changes my approach to photography or changes the picture? Did you see a change in your pictures with the urban? You mentioned urban geometry with different gear.
Yes, and I have to say, with the D50, which is my camera that I learned with, it's my baby. I still sometimes miss that camera. I will say I felt more excitement taking pictures with that camera than I ever did with the D55, which was, relatively new. Still, mid-range DSLR with a nicer lens, because the lens on that D50 was the kit lens, which is a bizarre 22 millimeter to 80 millimeter, very cheap plastic kit lens that again, someone else, what's his name, the guy who posts a lot of stuff on Ken Rockwell, kenrockwell.com, that he talked about, and actually convinced me when that lens broke to buy the same lens, because he said it should not be this good, and it did. But here's the thing that I was going to say, actually, so I'm glad you asked this. The D5500, it was a good camera. The lens was great, but I didn't feel that the quality of the images was that much better from the D50. And the D50, because it had the shorter lens, was more fun to handle, and it was less complicated. And then also the Fuji 100, the Fuji 100X, I love that camera, and that's where I learned to appreciate the electronic viewfinder, which is what the Sony has. But once I was able to afford this at the beginning of this year, and went out and bought it, this has given me new excitement. Not for the pictures I can take, but because the image is so sharp and so clear and so sometimes too sharp. Okay, that it allows me to then explore in post all kinds of manipulation. And that's something I always needed to do before, because see, it's not, and it goes back to the whole way of talking about our pictures and understanding our pictures. It's not just, oh, I'm going to take the picture. Because to me, that's just a small part of it, you know, but it's the full process. And so the quality of that camera, it is those images are exciting me again, like I was with the D50, which is where I learned how to do all that stuff. So it's in the full process of working with the image from the taking to the post that it's become. I'm happy taking. I mean, I've always been happy, but I'm excited. I am excited, just like when I got the D50 and I had it for 5 years, and I can see myself with this camera for 5 years or longer. By the way, and by the way, the lens that this has is a G lens, not a G, not a what is it? It's a master or whatever. It's their mid-range lens. It's not their G Grandmaster or whatever it is, which are their, you know, $2,500 lenses and more. And even then, with this lens, the images are amazing. So it's not about the gear, it's not about the cost, it's not about, for me, because I know you're into the different lenses and the prime lenses and all that stuff. For me, I'm a one lens photographer. And that's how I learned with my first SLR, my second SLR, kit lens, zoom lens, same thing, and so on. So I'm very comfortable with this. But I'm comfortable with the setup. I've stopped looking at, you know, other equipment and stuff like that, because first of all, I don't want to spend the money. Secondly, this is just working so beautifully. And after several months, I'm still, as a matter of fact, I'm more excited now, and with the passing of time, with the pictures and with what I can do. But it still also goes back to the talking about the images, because of the way that I analyze my images. And, you know, like we were doing the critiques, you know, applying that to my own pictures. So I'm taking a lot more pictures, but I'm also being a lot more critical about what I share. Although that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be liked or popular or whatever. So yeah, but I totally agree. I mean, there's so many factors, but I think we fixate on new and shiny, or in the movie House, you know, squirrel.
Christian asks, Fern, G versus GM, in bracket G Master. Which one do you have? G or a GM?
I have the G. I have the. Hold on, let me switch here. So I have the G, the 24-105. I love this lens, and with this lens, this is the one that convinced TJ to buy the quality of the images I was getting, and that he was seeing. But he, of course, because he bought it for work, and there was a lot of money because he hadn't bought a camera in like 5 years. So he got the.
I have for more than 5 years.
At work, really?
Yeah, I still work.
Oh no, we usually have a 4-year, 4-year cycle for computer. I don't know for equipment. And he still loves, by the way, the camera which I shot with once that he uses is a Nikon D800, and he loves that camera, and he's still using it for in-studio portraits. But for everything else, he bought the G Master 24-70 and 70-200, which honestly I would never want to buy because it's one of those white lenses that are so obnoxious. But yeah, the 24 to 105. Actually, the reason I finally bought this one was right when it came out. There was one review that said Sony finally got it right. You know, and this is someone who did all this analysis, blah blah blah, and said this lens is as good a quality as their Zeiss line, because Sony does have a Zeiss line of lenses, and as good quality image as their G Master, and better, because the 2470, the reviews are iffy, and that's a $2,500 lens, so you never know. Yes. So anyway, go ahead.
Christian wrote, this one, thought about it, rather heavy, isn't it? The lens.
Yes.
Rather heavy.
Yes. But remember, this is a mirrorless, and it's funny because what really, it's so funny. We weren't going to talk about equipment, but we are. But it's important. But I think it's important. But I think it's important in this way, you know, where you're asking intelligent questions, especially if you're trying to decide. I went to the camera shop. I said, let me see the D850, which was the other camera I was considering. And as soon as I picked it up, I'm like, no, it's a brick. It's huge. And then I picked this up, and because it's mirrorless, the camera itself is very small. Excuse me. I had been using a D5500, which is heavier than this, or just about the same, with a 200 millimeter lens. What is it? The 18 to 200 millimeter zoom lens. That was heavier. So to me, it really wasn't that much of a shock. Again, I love it. I mean, when I went to Minnesota now, I carried that camera with me everywhere. And tomorrow when I go to Carnival, I'm going to have it, you know, lug it around with me for about 3 hours, but I don't care. I mean, it's you know, walking around taking pictures of people. It doesn't bother me, but I've had the experience already with the previous one. And considering some of the other cameras and lenses, it feels right. And that's the other thing. That's exactly why I bought it. As soon as it was in my hands, it felt right.
Well, that's actually, for me, this is the only factor. If it feels right, if it's a camera, and that's sometimes I have to admit that I sometimes go. We have an electronics store not too far away, and I sometimes just wander through that store, just looking what they have and what's new. And I just take the cameras in the hand, in my hands, right? And they have all sorts, Sony, Nikon, Canon, and for me, but maybe it's just because I'm used to it. I'm used to working with Canon still frame cameras. Funnily enough, I always worked with Sony video cameras, and so so for video, Sony feels right for me, and it's certainly just because what we're used to. And and they had this. This was quite interesting because I was there a week ago, and they had this new Canon. I forgot the name of that camera, mirrorless camera. And I thought, well, what's had it on sale, and I just wanted to try it, right? And it's so tiny. And that's also a thing for me. The bigger the camera, the more comfortable I feel with that, which is kind of weird. But I have the feeling that I have more control over the camera the bigger it is. So I'm actually, just because of the size, I'm considering to get a battery pack for my camera. So just that it's bigger. Because
really.
Yeah, really, but that is there's indeed one big advantage to that. The bigger the camera, the less camera shake you will have, for simple physics reasons.
Right.
The smaller the camera, the more likely you shake it, and so that's the thing. But holding the camera is something I played around with, holding my camera differently over the last years, and I have my own way of holding my camera in the meantime, which probably looked pretty stupid, but it worked for
No,
me.
no. Well, you know, speaking of stupid things, and I don't know if anybody else does this kind of thing, but when I got my very first SLR when I was in my 20s, God, talk about your first 10,000 pictures are crappy. I'm so glad I don't have any of those pictures. I was so worried about protecting this cheap SLR, but I thought, again, I got a cheap SLR. I'm going to become Helmut Newton. I'm going to be, you know, Annie Leibovitz. I'm going to be Richard Avedon. Yay! Because nobody explains. I was so worried about the lens that I always did two things with that camera. Take the lens off, take the picture, put the lens back on, and also turn it off, turn it on, take the picture, take a couple of pictures, turn it off. To this day, I still take the lens cap off, and I have a filter, and I have the hood. But I still am very protective because, as some of you know, if you saw my post, I had the camera for like, I want to say 2 weeks, and I'm sitting right here, and I don't know what I did, and I dropped the camera, and it hit the corner of the lens, and it didn't hurt the camera, but the lens cap and the filter got stuck together, and there was no way of removing it until a friend of mine, I don't know what he did. So now I'm very protective of the camera and also the battery life. And one of the things that I've learned to accept, and this goes back into the way we think about and why we choose equipment and so on. And before I say this, the reason I chose the A7R3 as opposed to the Nikon, I was moving from DSLR from the regular, what's that called, CMOS, to the D850, which is what I thought of originally that I wanted to buy, which is a medium, not full frame. So I would need a new lens, and I would need to learn a camera completely. In other words, I would have to almost relearn photography in a lot of ways. So I figured, and then the Sony came out, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to have to learn a brand new camera with all of these bells and whistles and get a new lens and everything else. So in a sense, I'm starting again. Not really, because, you know, you pick up a camera and you know how it works. I get that. So
This is really serious question. What exactly do you have to learn new? I mean, I don't know how you work, but I'm lazy. So very often I shoot, and this might sound contradictory to when I say I'm lazy. I shoot full manual a lot because I'm lazy, because I think this is the easiest way and the simplest way to get the pictures I want. And plus, bonus, I have all control, full control over the outcome. So, which is kind of lucky me. But I definitely shoot in any kind of automatic mode or program mode if that were easier, if that would give me the pictures that I want, simply because as I said, I'm lazy. So I don't think there's any kind of difference really between any brand of camera, because the three settings you have, aperture, exposure time, and ISO, there's not really more than that.
yes.
So, if you figured out how to change these, and even if you shoot program automatic or aperture priority or time priority, these are kind of the same on every camera. So
Right.
where's the learning needed?
Well,
Switch to a different camera.
because remember so here's the thing, and it goes back to Christian's comment, and I can't remember who else, about there's art and there's technology. And I've talked about this before. One of my colleagues, who's no longer working in my department, but who worked in our department, he and his wife are both photographers. They're studied at the university. They were professional. She still does some photography. He has not gone back to it. He's almost as old as I am. So he started with the cameras that were a little hole in a rock and a piece of white paper. But he worked for Ansel Adams for a little bit, and he met him, but he worked as a security guard for him, not as a photographer. But anyway, one of the things he said to me, which still is one of those things that's tattooed on my brain, is there's technical photographers, and there's artistic photographers. He considers himself a technical photographer. He'll go in there and do the his wife, and I'm the same way. It's like, oh, let's take a picture of that. Boom. And it's done. And for me, by the way, I shoot, and I've always shot pretty much automatic. Now I used to shoot. I shoot. I gotta hold the aperture priority. I shoot aperture priority. But it was a matter of learning the camera because I'm not technical in that way. You know, for a while there, I don't know, you sent me an article about ISO or something like that a couple of years ago, and I'm like, you know, so I've learned. But again, it doesn't influence how I take well, it does, because I've learned how to use some of the buttons and stuff. Influence what I take a picture of, because I'll tell you what, if the camera, you know, sometimes you have your automatic settings and the camera just isn't focusing, or it's just telling you no.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. No, I see that. Yeah.
But what I used to do in my other cameras was switch to manual. With this one, I'm like, this is so weird. I will just reposition her a little or something, and it will usually take the picture. And I will also say, and I've said this before, I have no problem not taking the picture because I take so many pictures, which I think are at least modestly viewable. Which is what I usually share. I mean, I know I have very few iconic, really superb images, but even those are a matter of taste, especially with my photography, because it's a little abstract. But for me, it was the learning a whole ecosystem in a sense. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to invest all this money and time, I don't care if it's, you know, Canon was out because yes, they have the great lenses, but really the technology wise, it was really between those two cameras, or the GFX 50, which is the full frame. I think I told you about that I was actually thinking of getting that one too. But for the kind of photography I do sometimes, like tomorrow, it's not really ready for that. But I tend to shoot, and again, I talked to TJ a lot about this. I'll pick up the camera and I'll take like 5 minutes to focus and frame, and you know, and so that's what I'm comfortable with. And to your thing about the camera movement, this thing has a level, so it'll not only level horizontally, but it'll also level vertically. That has taught me how to just click instead of click. You know what I mean? So in a sense, which is the D850 or a lot of the top end DSLRs do not have. So it's again, you know, you have to decide, because, and that's the other thing. That's why this fixation, you know, is you have to decide, you have to get the camera and take the picture. And the other thing is to answer your question about what are you learning? I'm learning how to see the way the camera sees. And with the D50, it felt very natural. It was really a fast learning curve of learning how to see the way my baby saw. With the D5500, it never felt right. So I never really, I mean, it was a good camera, but you know, and the Fuji, I got to learn how to see the way it sees. So for me now with this, I haven't even picked up the Fuji since I bought this. Again, it was just like with the D50. So this is my new baby. I see the way the camera sees. I know, and of course, because this has electronic viewfinder, I see exactly what it's going to capture, because I'm seeing the digital image in front of me. So in a sense, that has actually liberated me to explore a little more and to learn the buttons a little more in a ways that I've never done before. So the complicated aspect of this has actually liberated me to be more technical a little. In ways that the other cameras never did. And this has got a screwy menu, by the way. But I'm learning it, and it's becoming a part of me. I mean, I hate to put it that way because it sounds weird, but and I'm learning. Yeah. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Yeah, but what I got out of that is you want to sell me your camera because it's the best camera that is out there, which is plain and simple a lie because my camera is no bullshit. But still, we have the question open. Why do we focus so much on gear and the opinion of experts? So why is that? I mean, this is what you said. It's basically about our own needs. What do we? You take a very different type of photos than I do, and so you have different needs. And so here, I think I personally, because I completely stopped reading. What I did, I have a bookshelf here full of photography magazines, full of books about photography, and I completely stopped reading books about photography. I completely stopped reading magazines. Sometimes when I see something with some creative ideas for photography, then sometimes I buy a magazine and I put it in my bathroom, and it's on the windows.
All right, overshare.
Well, I can talk about the windowsill in my bathroom, which is full of magazines, and so that's the thing. And I thought it's because when you sent me that list, I really thought about it. Why is that? Why do we focus? I get it that we focus so much on so-called experts, because if we don't know anything about a certain topic or not a lot, then we'll look out for people who seem to know. And when they say something, apparently they take at least decent pictures, most of them. And we say, okay, they use this camera and they say this is the right stuff and they say that is the right stuff. And what I found, and that happened to me in the last weeks twice, that someone messaged me, and I really don't say that, and I hope you know that I'm not the type of person who would say that to brag or something. But I got really two messages that really made me happy. They said what I like from two different people within 2 weeks. What I like about your videos that you post is that you seem to be approachable, and you don't seem to be a person to tell people you have to do this or you have to do that, and only this is right and that is right. And one of these people, they just bought a camera. So I wanted to start photography, and I did so much research online, and I watched so many videos and read so many blog posts, and I was completely discouraged. And I was just, because everyone tells you have to do this and you can't do that, and which is just plain, it almost broke my heart, because what do these people get out of putting others down? It's basically so simple. That's my personal approach, and that's what I tell people sometimes. Say if you don't have an assignment and get paid for a job, and someone tells you don't do this or don't do that in photography, then tell them to fuck off, because the only person who can tell you what to do or not to do and what is right and what is wrong is the person who pays you for a certain assignment. And everyone else is just, it's completely bogus, because there is no right and there is no wrong. There's only an effective and a less effective, and there's only a right or wrong for a certain assignment or for a certain task, not in general. So this is, what do people get out of, other than that they feel high and mighty if they tell people what to do or what not to do? But that's the thing, that these people are present, and these people, because they apparently have the durability to do that, and the thing is, what makes a photographer? What makes a good photographer or a professional photographer? What do? They do whatever is needed to get their picture. And
Yes.
since everyone makes different pictures, per definition, there is no one who can tell another person what to do or not to do. It's that simple. So the only thing you can get out of these blog posts and magazines and books is get ideas, get a view on different approaches, how things might work better or not. It's one of my favorite examples of all time is because I do know a bit about the technical side of photography. So I was years ago, I was in Oktoberfest in Munich. I hate Oktoberfest. I was there because to take photos, right? And there was this how do you call that spinning thing where people sit in, right, at night and
Oh, like carnival. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean. I don't know the word. And the lights, and I wanted to take a picture, and so of course, how never did that before, right? And so I thought, okay, how can I pull that off? And I made my settings, and I realized, okay, I have to take settings, or I have to make settings in my camera, which I can't pull that photo off because I don't have a tripod with me. And Steph was with me, and she later showed me on the way on the train, right? She showed me the photos, and she had that exact picture that I wanted to make. And I said, "How did you do that?" And she said, "I don't know." I was like, "Give me the camera," right? And I checked her settings, and she had like 1 second exposure. I said, "Wow, how did you do that? A 1 second exposure? That is impossible to pull off." And she said, "Well, I didn't know that." So, bumblebees can't fly, right? It's it's this people telling you this is possible or this is not possible, and do this or don't do that unless they pay you for doing this or not doing that. Tell them to fuck off. That's my personal opinion about that. Try it. Don't think about that. Do whatever is needed to get that shot if you want that shot, and then it is right. And that is how professional photographers work. That is the only way they work. They do whatever is needed. Simple as that.
Yeah, and it's funny because
it helps with that, of course.
Right. But so so to Christian's comment about being a control freak, I think that's a part of it because we're so afraid, and especially now where everybody is a photographer, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. You know, we all want that iconic image, and I'm sorry, you look through, for example, Jesus, what's his name? Adams, Ansel Adams, or Leibovitz, and so on. They have maybe 12 iconic images that come up. You know who they are. Avedon, the same thing. You start looking at a lot of their pictures, and I say this because I saw. Which I post, and again, nobody bit. There was a live question and answer with which is still available on YouTube with the photography archivist at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And what was interesting to me was that one of a couple of the pictures, but one of them especially that she showed, and it's this woman photographer, and oh my God, it's brilliant. And a friend of mine was watching it too. So we both came to the same conclusion. What makes this picture special? I mean, there was no lines. It just wasn't. You know, and looking at like the duChemin course, you know, looking at a lot of the photographers that he recommends. Yes, they're wonderful pictures, but some of them, there's a few. But for the, you know, when you're looking at the catalog, it's like. And again, it's a matter of taste. So I think it's that control freak thing. I think it's that ego thing that's tied to the control freak thing of being right. I think nowadays, especially that and you brought up a good point about the discouragement, because what we tend to do is scare people away because this is our territory.
I,
Um, and it's like
if
all of
they do
those.
it differently than we do it, they are wrong.
Yes, well, it goes back to Canon versus Nikon, or digital versus film, or whatever. There's all these tribes,
Black and white.
and it's like black and white. The phone photography sucks. No,
I have a beautiful story. It was perfect for that. So I was in Rome for a couple of days, and a colleague
and they still let you back in Germany. Oh well.
They did indeed. Even though I was the first, okay, it hasn't to do with photography, but no, so we went there by plane, and I had to go by bus. No, yeah, by bus from the airport to the central station. From there by train to the hotel, whatever. So I got off the bus, and I didn't even my feet hardly touched the ground when there was this guy asking me in Italian. I don't speak a word of Italian. Asking me for a cigarette. And
Oh,
I didn't understand what he wanted, and I just looked at him, and then he made that sign, and I said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't understand," in English. And then he said, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were Italian." And he turned around and went away. So, which is kind of, and that happened to me. Then an American tourist asked me in very simple English for the way, and I replied in the way I talk to you, right? And he said, "Oh, you're not Italian. Sorry, I thought you were Italian." And so apparently I look Italian. So okay, but what I wanted to say is, when I went back to work, a colleague of mine asked me, so, "Oh yeah, how was it in Rome? Did you take photos?" And I had a couple of photos on my blog already, and I showed her some of the photos. And there was this one shot of posted it, I think, 2 weeks ago, of the pines, this sunset photo, whatever. So had a really weird atmosphere. And she said, "Yeah, it's a nice photo, but I don't like how much you edited that shot." And I said, "Well, this shot is hardly edited at all. It's basically out of camera because." Again, lazy. I have my camera on for about a year now or something. Or no, actually, since I have my 24mm lens, because it gives me the exact photos that I want. I have it on JPEG plus RAW. So, and most of the time I use the JPEGs because I'm just too lazy, because the pictures look like I wanted them. So, and I said, "Well, this picture isn't edited at all." And then she said, "Oh, then I like it." So, which is really, when I say, okay, why? Either I like it or I don't. How does the way we take a photo for the viewer? Why is the way a photo is taken for the viewer, who, quote unquote, just looks at the photo, in any way important? How can we switch from "I don't like it" to "I like it" just because I learned how the photo was made? How does that baffle me? I couldn't even reply because I was really stunned by that reply. And she isn't she isn't a photographer as well. She takes photos, like families, photos and stuff, but it's not really. She even calls herself not a photographer, but she wants to see photos all the time, right? So that was really, I have to talk with her about that. How that influence, or why that influenced her. So this is why is there this? How is that important? With which camera something was made, or what it was done with a shot or not? It's about how the photo looks. Either I like it or I don't. So that's at least how I see it.
yeah, and I think part of it is because, and we say everybody's a photographer now, but when you read, for example, which I gave up on, I have to say. And I like her work, but Susan Sontag's On Photography. Is On Photography, is that the name of the book? And she, in her introduction, she's talking about, you know, how people, you know, everybody's got a brownie now and everybody's taking pictures and they have slideshows and blah, blah, blah. I think it's that ubiquitousness, that another big word. I love these two words, quotidian aspect of photography that has been around, the daily use of a camera, whether it's a brownie or whatever, for over a century. And the fact that really, let's be real, anybody can pick up a camera and take a picture. No argument.
Right.
So I think it's that whole idea of, you know, it has to be this and it has to be that. And then, as we've talked about so many times too, the mixing in the concept of, well, if it's photojournalism, which I agree with, it shouldn't be retouched or just a little, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line, and it goes back to my question about, because, and I will ever, why do we not know how to talk about art? Why do we not know how to talk about our photographs? Why do we not know how to talk about, well, you know, there's the depth, for example, which is the chapter that I just went through with the duChemin course. How you create depth in different ways, by color, by, of course, depth of field, by light. How come we don't know how to talk about that? And when we do, and okay, so part of the course is you get to join duChemin's Facebook group for free for a year. And I will admit, it has been very disappointing because on the one hand, yes, he has the guidelines of please be respectful if you're going to give an opinion, blah, 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 which I love. The other thing he says is, please, if you're going to comment on pictures, don't just, oh, I like this, or, you know, analyze and critique the image. And you know me, I love that stuff. If anything, my photography is great. My talent is critiquing. So my photography is influenced by that talent of mine. That is a talent. And I have commented on others' photos. Now, I'm not expecting you to become my best friend or to say thank you or blah, 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 but nothing. And not just once, but I think just about every photograph that I've commented like 8 photos, nothing. And what I'm wondering about is, do these people think that I'm trying to be a pretentious know-it-all? Is it because I'm not?
No, you don't try to. You're pretty good at that.
Okay, that was good.
I had to.
You know, it was easy. And it was perfect timing. But you know what I mean? And is it that now if duChemin went in and commented on their pictures that way, would they then go, oh, yes, thank you, because of this and that, the other? So is it because I'm just some schmuck who takes pictures that my opinion doesn't? You know, there's all these questions. And to be honest, the couple of pictures that I posted, I mean, again, I wasn't expecting to get, but I remember one of the pictures I posted was the one of Dominic, my friend who's a photographer who I'm going to be hopefully seeing tomorrow, who I've taken some really good portraits of. And it's the one where he's leaning and I remember when I posted it on Tumblr, I got a comment about, oh, this and this and this, and this picture is absolutely wonderful. That detailed and critiqued the image. And yet in that duChemin group,
sorry, Lynn Silas wrote, apparently the name of the book is Sontag. And
yes.
Sontag's On Photography was written in the 70s pre-digital era. Sorry.
Yes. Yes, but the whole thing that she talks about in that book, at least in the introduction, is it is pre-digital, but pretty much it's a lot of what she said in that book, which I keep wanting to go back to. Although I don't know why, I just found it, some of it was just, I mean, I love theory and I love critique and cultural critique and social critique. It's my field, but my field of study. But some of it was just, you know, I mean, just creating it just bored me. But her comment is valid back in the 70s and today, that everybody, I remember as a kid having a little brownie Kodak camera, and we didn't have money to get the slideshow and stuff like that, but if you were moderately middle class or even upper working class, because we were poor, you would get slides and you would go on vacation and you would take pictures of everything. Does that sound familiar? I mean, you didn't take pictures of your food, but sometimes,
Yeah.
and you didn't post them everywhere, but it's the same thing. It's just that it's even more now. So it's become explosive, exponentially explosive.
I think the well, of course, it's become more because it's cheaper, etc., etc. The thing, though, is, I think what's the big difference is that we see these photos now, and we have no way of not seeing them unless we don't log in onto the internet. If you're in Facebook, you're flooded with, this is my kid, this is my dog, this is my cat, this is my food, this is my couch, this is my garden, this is the flower on the garden far on the left. So this is,
hey, watch it with those flower picture comments, okay? Because Sharon's here. Sharon Boswell is here, and I take pictures of flowers too, buddy.
Oh, as well. I just go closer right now with the macro possibility.
Oh, that's true. Yes, yes.
And but if I look through old family albums, 90% of the photos in there are just, well, oh yeah, nice to see mom and nice to see Uncle Fred and but it's nothing that's really. See, my dad on when we went on vacation, he also made like 300 photos and put them all in an album. Or we had these slideshow evenings that you had to sit through. It's just the same. It was just didn't occur too often, right? But the thing, though, is, and that's maybe it's just my very limited view on Tumblr. Because that is the only platform I frequently log into and look at photos. And but on the other hand, what I find fascinating about Tumblr is that, at least I have, this is my feeling about that this is, if we look at other platforms, 500px, Flickr, etc., 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 there's like, of course, there are also these maniacs like you and I, right, who just dedicated their life to taking photos and posting them online. And but Tumblr is really, other than, at least my personal opinion, maybe I'm completely off, and maybe it's just my dashboard and the people I interact. Yes. But it's really people like you and I who love to take photos, while on other platforms it's more like this competition, who's the more professional photographer. But well, we have that on Tumblr as well, of course. Yes. But these are just like people that I avoid like the plague. No, but what I wanted to say is, what I see now, and I've been observing that for quite a while now, because of course we have a couple Christian, of course not Christian, right? Just wanted to say that, and I really mean that. And not Christian, but there are a lot of analog photographers on Tumblr who post just like anything, like every photo that they take, and I have the feeling that because you have to put more time and effort into analog photography, and you have to put money into analog photography, you kind of feel you have to show it, and every photo is because you have to take more time and effort, or put more time and effort into it, and because you have to put money into it, and because it's special, because it's analog,
because it's analog,
it automatically becomes more special to them.
Because it makes them
my analog photography, I rarely shoot analog, but it's like every photo, yeah, this is. When I think, okay, yeah, I have to scan that, and I have to crop that, and I have to post that, and then I compare it to my digital photos, and say, yeah, that's digital photo is just better because I had 3 of them and I took the best one, and I only show the best of my best of my best of my digital photography because I can't choose. And if I'd only show my analog photos, then I would post like every 7 months 2 photos if I'd only show the best of the best. But okay,
Yes.
maybe.
And you know what's really funny is with the analog, there's also, and also with digital, I will say, but with the analog, there's the Cartier Bresson thing about the untouched image. You know, in his case, you know, his images were the showed the edges of the film strip itself. You know, the rough edges and so that you knew that he took the perfect image in camera. But you know what, Cartier Bresson, no, because you look at your contact sheets, like I have several of his contact sheets, and yes, you had that perfect image, but bottom line is you took at least another 24 to 36 more of the same thing, okay? And your image was not virginal and pristine because you had a person who processed your photographs. And at one point, the person the person who was the top processor for a developer for Magnum Photography, which is the organization that Cartier Bresson formed that still has the top news photographers, blah, blah, blah. So you had someone still take that image, as wonderful as it was in camera, and mess with it and present it in the very best way possible. But again, and that goes back to the whole thing about not knowing. You know, there's this thing of, oh, like Cartier Bresson. Oh, you know, I want my images to be okay, fine, but if it's going to be that image, you'd better show me something that's really fantastic, because I see it with all kinds, phone, digital, whatever. Oh, unedited. You know, so that's lovely, but is it an inspiring photograph? Did I stop and look and at least wonder what the heck is going on here? No. Even if I don't understand it, even if I don't like it, but I didn't even, it's like, you know, so it all goes back to,
I always have the I don't know, but this is my feeling. If I see people writing like novels under their photos, how they did that, and which camera, and which camera setting, and which film, and which is certainly interesting for people who I don't want to devalue that, but sometimes I have the feeling, if I read that it's more about the photographer than about the photo itself.
and about the equipment.
And about the equipment, right? It's like, oh, I have this camera and I use that film. It's like, yeah, it is nice, and but that's maybe, and I really don't mean that in a sarcastic way. That's maybe the good thing about digital photography. If we post the photos and leave the EXIF data in, we can just on the computer click on the little eye and we see all relevant information in there, and we don't have to give that. And it's, I personally, sometimes, depends of course how it's presented, right? Sometimes I'm really distracted by this novel of technical information that some people post all of the time. But well, everyone should do whatever they want to, and I will certainly
Yes.
never tell anyone what to do or not to do. But yeah, it distracts me, and it's even on a psychological level that numbers and letters are, because they're more abstract, they will draw more attention than a picture. So
See, and
but
I don't mind.
if your blog is about that, then please go ahead, do.
Yes. Yes. So that whole thing goes into the, by the way, it's 12:15 and I didn't stop when you were talking. I'm telling you now. Well, 12:15 here. I don't know, it's like what, 8:15 over there?
9:15 here.
9:15. So we've been talking for over an hour. But the whole naming thing and the kind of descriptions and so on that we put, and I will, say why I find this fascinating. On the one hand, there's again the people who say, "Oh, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you shouldn't need description and blah blah blah, and just put the picture out there," which of course always makes me think, well, yes, it's worth 1,000 words if it's good or if it's appealing to a certain audience, but then also depending where that audience is from, what generation they are, what culture, ethnicity, blah blah blah, those words may not be at all what you intended. And I don't think that on the one hand we should impose our vision on the audience, but sometimes backstory or a little naming is important. And I bring this up because I originally started doing the creative naming thing for my photos, and I have for that, strangely enough, for being sarcastic and funny. I don't know about funny, but sarcastic definitely. I have a good imagination, and I could do that. But I also stopped and I thought, no, I want the images to, in a way, speak for themselves. I want people to know where I took the image, and sometimes, as you know, I'll put a link to, let's say, what was like the Cuban restaurant that I went to. I'll put a link to the Cuban restaurant in Minneapolis that I went. Cuban restaurant in Minneapolis. But or I'll put a description. This is what happened. Blah blah blah. But my photographs, the naming is literally for me so that I can go to Tumblr, look at the name and the date and the location and know exactly where I can find it. So it's really a cataloging thing. And I will look at a lot of images that have really lovely and cute and creative names or have poems and stuff like that. And I'll look at them and I'll say, great images, a lot of times, great images, but also a lot of times I'll sit there and I'll look, this picture got, all these many likes, and my picture is almost exactly the same. And you know me, and I've said this, and it doesn't bother me, but I'm curious. I'm curious. Why is it that pictures that are so similar, is it the naming? Is it because I know I'm not mainstream at all in what I photograph usually, or the way I present it. And I'm perfectly comfortable with that because I do get good feedback from photographers I admire and from people who like photography, whose opinion I admire. And it's good, solid feedback every once in a while. So I'm going to start crying. I'm honored because I never ever expected that to happen. But still, I wonder, because to me that also leads into the whole idea of what makes a picture good and what makes a picture popular. The Beatles photographs that was it George Harrison who was taking the pictures? One of them was okay, so one of them, when they were together, took up photography and took a lot of photographs. And I'm looking at these pictures. Oh, they're wonderful. They're this and that. And I'm sitting there going, they're pictures of the Beatles jumping on a bed, doing this, doing that. So is it because they're pictures of the Beatles that they're so amazing? Or is it the photography itself technically? Is it the artistic part of it? Because the artistic part of it, I don't see in a lot of those images. I mean, like the one of Brigitte Bardot that I posted years ago on Luxlit that was like, oh, it's excruciating how gorgeous she looks. Yeah, okay, it's Bardot. She was pretty at the time. But is it because it's about a story of her going to bed with a photographer? You know what I mean? So that whole naming.
Yeah. That plays even more into or is, weirdly enough, is, at least as I see it, absolutely connected to the story with my colleague, because what happens with photos is the whole story happens inside of the person who views or looks at the photo. So we create with the knowledge we have or with the knowledge we don't have. We create a certain story. We create a certain background for a photo. We see something that we know or that we have. This is we as human beings have this ability to I don't know the English word to make mental transfers. Probably doesn't make sense in English.
No, but I get it. Yeah.
You get what I mean. So
Yeah.
what we see, we connect that to what we already know. And so if I see something and it reminds me of something, then I automatically make a connection to that. So if I see a photo that George Harrison took, to take that example, and he took a photo of whoever, and I like George Harrison, then I will probably like the picture just because I like George Harrison. And if the picture is decent, then I will like it even more. And if I don't get the picture, I don't understand it, and I like the photographer, then I will, or if I know that because I've heard that or I saw other stuff this person did before, then I'm probably more likely open to looking closer and to thinking, because I automatically assume what they did was on purpose and it was artistic because they are an artist. And if I see a photo made but there was this years ago this experiment with a chimpanzee that they gave a paintbrush and colors, and the ape or a monkey, I think it's an ape because chimpanzees and apes, I think, and they hung these photos in galleries, and everyone said, "Oh wow, great art." And then, as soon as they told them, well, it was an animal painted that, then suddenly it wasn't great art anymore, right? So it's what happens, what makes something art or makes something interesting, it is what the viewer or the audience makes out of that. And
Yes.
so that's, I think, if we look at the spectrum of photographers, and there's everyone of us lives somewhere on that spectrum, and if we take the pure really, just there are people who say, okay, I let my words describe my photos, and others say I use my pictures as or my photos as illustrations for my words. So these are the two polar opposites, and we are all somewhere on that spectrum. I'm more on the spectrum that I say, okay, I would never post a photo without a caption, because that's important, because I want to give people at least a hint why I took that shot. And because for my work, this is important. Others say, no, I don't. I don't want to give any sort of direction, because I want the audience to be completely free and completely make their own picture. And so I think that is an interesting thing, and it's also a way how we could get in sort of a communication with the audience, because if they have, the questions will show up if we don't give them any hints. And well, on the other hand, maybe they will disagree or say, okay, I saw the same thing. And I just see a lot of things happening on the chat. Christian writes, so how large is the role of the context on perception of a picture? Quite large, I think. Yes, I also think so. Fern wrote on the chat, yes. Christian Augustin writes, I just realized in the beginning of the show I said Christian, and now I say Christian. That's because
that's fine.
I probably can't really switch between German and English too fast.
Remember, I don't speak English either, so I mean, I'm not you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Yes, I'm not native born, so
Christian,
I get it.
I was in the Irving Penn exhibition here in Berlin, and I was very disappointed. I don't understand all the buzz about Irving Penn. So for me, there seems to be something missing. And yeah, I'm not too familiar with Irving Penn. And thank you, Christian. Thank you, Christian. He doesn't mind how I call him. So I know some of his photos, and I really don't also really don't get it. But that's what I find interesting in terms of in art classes when you get, and some of you who watch that might know that I have this slight little obsession with Buster Keaton, which is a little known fact. And that, by the way, it happened exactly like that, because while I was in university, there was a course on Buster Keaton, and I didn't like Keaton at all. Because
Really?
really, absolutely. As a kid, I loved Chaplin, I loved Laurel and Hardy, and I had my dad had a couple of Super 8 movies, and it was on German television back then as well, all the old silent comedies. And I didn't like Keaton because I didn't understand him, as it turned out. And there was this course on Keaton, and it was early in the morning. And back then I said, okay, I want to visit the course in the morning so that I have.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna
Yeah. Okay, that I have the afternoon free, right, or late afternoon free, and I attended that course on Keaton, and because I had to look closer, because we started every class with watching one of his movies, and we had to do papers on Keaton, and then suddenly clicked, and then I realized that this guy was, at least in my personal opinion, a genius. And so I think it's the same thing with many photographers or artists in general, that if we look closer, we can find something, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
That is a different thing, and it's something that I said on these conversations, I think too often already. It's my personal feud, no, not feud, with Picasso. I get it. I get Picasso. I understand his photos. I don't his paintings, but I don't like them at all. I see why he was a genius. He was absolutely, certainly one of the most important and most influential painters, artists in general of the 20th century. But I would never hang up one of his paintings. So if I ever find a painting by Picasso in my basement, then
well, that's interesting, because I will say his blue period, definitely. Before he went into Cubism, he had some lovely portraits. But yes, because so I want to go back to Buster Keaton, because strangely enough, one of the things I still think about very often, and that influences my photography to this day, which goes to the learning part of photography, my concerns, is one day I heard, like 30 years ago, maybe even about 30, 40 years ago, well, I'm that old, someone talking about Buster Keaton and how he understood the fact that his medium was two-dimensional.
Mm.
And so how he played with that. And that is one of the things that still influences me. The whole idea of photography being two-dimensional. And when I do especially my my architecture, urban geometry photography, I still very much think about, this is flat, and sometimes I want it to be flat. And most of the times when I do the urban geometry, I do like the flatness, which is why, oh, excuse me. Excuse me. It's got gas. When I take pictures of buildings and so on, I don't want people in them, because I want to destroy the what's that called, the scale. I want you to see that flat, almost painting like quality of what I'm seeing. So it's interesting, because I'm the opposite of you. I still don't like Chaplin. Yes, he's technically brilliant, and I can see it. I think he's dull.
I think you meant you still don't like Keaton.
No, I still don't like Chaplin.
I don't like Chaplin at all.
at all. I think his brilliant, but
loved him as a kid, but now it's just this. I get it why he was a great director. I get it why he was a great comedian. And funnily enough, Keaton said about Stan Laurel. Keaton said not Chaplin was the greatest, not I was the greatest, not Lloyd was the greatest. Stan Laurel was the greatest comedian of the 20th century, and he might be right with that. But of course, up to everyone's personal taste.
Yes.
What's interesting about, and well, let's not talk too much about Keaton in this because it's about photography. But what's interesting about Keaton, you can watch Keaton movies today and they still look very, very modern because Keaton was one of the first people to use moving cameras at a time when movies were mostly just like stage plays, one camera. And he had that as well, of course. And he used, and this is so recommendation, if you just watch one Keaton movie and you want one that is really from a movie making standpoint, absolutely still is an iconic picture. Sherlock Jr. is an amazing movie with and he just did like everything, and it's so surreal and technically still holds up till today. Very imaginative, incredibly funny, and also very poetic in its surrealism. So enough Keaton.
So I'm going to share this link on the YouTube chat. It is an article about the documentary Smash His Camera, and then I'll get back to your point about Keaton and the whole idea of
The link will
why
be
are these
in the description, by the way. Just saying, I will copy the video. I just said I will copy the link in the video description later.
Any web addresses and try. Oh, you can't share web addresses. All right, so I will. Well, did you see it though, or I'll just
send it to me. Can you send it to me on the Hangouts chat? And I will put it in.
And then I will. So anyway, the thing about that film is it's about Galella, who's the guy who was the paparazzi who dedicated most of his career to photographing Jacqueline Onassis, and he wound up being sued by her and so on, and there was a retrospective at the one of the museums in New York, and one of the central questions about his photography was, okay, it's Jacqueline Onassis.
I just posted the link to the chat because I can do that.
Oh, okay.
Moderating that, but you should have moderating rights now as well.
Oh, okay. So, there it is. Okay, so, there it is. Yeah, I have the wrench now. So, but this is one of those films that I saw that made me really. I mean, I've always thought about this, but that addresses that question. Other questions as well. But is it because it's photos of Jacqueline and others, but mostly of Jacqueline, or is it because, is it because this guy he was following Marlon Brando, and I can't remember the other actor, and this is in the late 50s, and he was snapping, doing the paparazzi thing, and Marlon Brando just got so pissed off, he up and belted him. Is Galello famous because he's been a provocateur, because he's been a pain in the ass, because he's a controversial figure? Is that why his photographs are famous, or is it because the photographs are good and in and of themselves? If you didn't know it was Galello, would you just look at it and go, eh? You know what I mean? So that's the thing. If you can find that documentary, it's really good, and the article's really interesting too, and I think it covers that.
There's the question: can we really say? And this is really a serious question. Can we really? There's the word again. I hope this won't trigger a new big discussion. Can we objectively say that a photo is really good, other than I mean, what is a good photo? The only thing, and I think that plays very well with the whole topic of why are we so focused on experts and why are we so focused on gear? The only way to objectively talk about the quality of a photo is if we talk about the technical aspects. We can say this photo has a bigger resolution than that one. It is sharper than this one. The colors are clearer, the contrasts are punchy, whatever. But everything else is something that is so much dependent on all the circumstances, on all the context, on the time. How often did it happen that something was suddenly considered to be art, uh, and what it wasn't art before that? So the question is also, if something is art, can it, we talked about that I think last time, can it become not art again? So I think the latter is not, well, that would open, I don't want to open that can
No.
of worms now, but so the how artistic something is always dependent on the context of a society. What we see when we see, if it doesn't have a relevance to us, when we see paintings from completely different cultures, we will only understand them if we understand the context, how they were made and what the thought process was. As other, in a non-technical way, of course, we can say this is
I think this is pretty. I think this is not pretty. Yeah, yeah.
right.
But I think, and again, you know how I feel. There's no such thing as objectivity. We try to approach it, but and you know I'm not going to get involved in any discussion.
And that's
So that's not you.
we should, in something like journalism, should be the main concern, to be as objective as ever possible.
As objective as possible, but there's
Right.
no such thing as objectivity. But the thing is, you brought up an interesting point. You can say, and it really makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to get all Buddhist here, but there's this is the camera, this is the lens, this is the time of day, blah blah blah. All the technical stuff is something that's very grounded. Is something that you cannot argue against. It is facts. Okay, this is what I use. And nowadays with digital photography, I mean, it's in the exit file. So, you know, at some point it can be hunted down. But everything else, including what you said, for example, about the colors being punchy, it's visible, but it's visible to most of us. But what if you're colorblind? What if you're, what if you have visual impairment? What if you don't necessarily like color and you don't care? So all of that falls into the more personal criteria part of it. But here's what I think, and maybe this is why we do that. Once we get into the personal criteria thing, is when then there's the shooting down because you don't know what you're talking about because you do this and you do this. And it's like, why isn't, if I can look at a picture and say, perfect example, and I don't, but if I can look at a picture like your picture of the young woman that you don't even have on there anymore in your 365, T-Voom 365, with the light and the little mirror, and she's nude, but it's not, I mean, it's not a nude photograph per se. The lines of the photograph, the light, the subtle shading of that image, the innovative, the composition, the innovative idea of it, that was just such a lovely film, a lovely image. Now, why should I be afraid? And I think we are afraid of talking about this stuff this way, because we're going to be shot down because we don't know what we're talking about, because we're not Arthur Penn, or we're not, David duChemin or whatever. So what? The more we talk about this, and the more we learn it, but we're afraid. We're afraid. I mean, I've come to that conclusion. We're afraid to do this.
Definitely afraid. And this is something, and what I realized in the last couple of months, I mean, why do we do that here, what we do?
Because we're buttheads and we don't care.
Exactly. No, really, because we don't care. I have no problem whatsoever if anyone disagrees with me, because I will just, Tiernan, right? Shoot them down on my. No, that was a joke. That was really a joke. I have no problem. I love discussions. I love conversation, which was interesting. It was very interesting discussion. Let's put it like that, because apparently we meant the same thing but just used different words. Okay, so we found consent in that, but so it's the why do we do that? We do it because we like doing it.
But we want to learn too, because we've learned from each other. We always learn from each other.
That's what I wanted to say. What do we like about that is that we learn. I learn more through 2 hours talking with you than by 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years reading books, because that is what, at least as I see it, and this was the original idea, or the first, not the original idea, the first topic that we wanted to talk about today. How do we learn photography? I think that learning about anything, not only photography, and I forgot to switch the camera. There's feedback that I got, that I always forget to switch the cameras. How do we learn about anything is a circulatory thing. We learn something, then we practice it. By practicing it, and this is, and here now, my Buddhist approach to that, if we learn something, it is we focus on that. It's in our conscious focus, and then through practice we have to unlearn it again, so that it shifts back into our mind. It becomes automatic, so that we don't have to see. I learned something. You talked about how to create depth in a photo, so you now know a couple of concepts how you could pull that off. And the next time you go out taking photos, you see, okay, this is a scenery I could create depth by, and then you focus on creating depth and not on the photo itself. So you focus on creating depth, and you see, okay, I can do this and I can do that. I can use light, I can use color, I can use depth of field. And then after you did it a couple of times, it becomes an automatic thing. It shifts back. Yes. So then you take photos, and then you realize another thing, that you say, okay, I want to learn how to do this, or, oh, I want to focus on this. And then this becomes your focus, and then this shifts back in your mind. And so this is how we learn. And one thing triggers the other, and it becomes more and more and more and more. And of course you can, until your last day on this planet, shoot the shallow depth of field macro flower photos that I've been shooting lately. And if you're happy with that, fine, but that wouldn't be enough for me, because I see, okay, then over time I get bored, and I still have my base that I can always return to, where I feel safe, where I don't have to think. Because if I see a scenery and then I'm just, it's relaxing. That's, by the way, that's the main reason why I rarely shoot analog, because I have to think too much. I have to think which film is in my camera, which ISO is it, what white balance is set to that, how many photos do I have left? Can I take this photo? Oh no, I have oh, fuck that. It's just too much thinking for me. Others might not. Others might have more practice and they don't have to think anymore. But for me, this is work, and for photography shouldn't be work for me. It's relaxing, and I love to have my photos and look through them in my Lightroom catalog and do my touch-ups here and touch-ups there. That is sort of meditation for me. That calms me. So this is my approach. But this is not this approach is not right and this approach is not wrong. It's just one way to do it. And if can get something out of that and use things that I did because they saw it in my videos or heard me talking about that, and they can use that and put that in their photographic toolbox and use that tool for their photos. And that is how we learn. I learn more by looking at how other people do stuff and see, oh, this is a good idea, I can try that myself, or no, that wouldn't work for me, than by reading books. The Jerry Lewis approach, as I call it, because Jerry Lewis has said reading book. I wouldn't say that reading books is of no value, not at all. But he said reading books is of no value. You have to do stuff and you have to watch stuff and you have to talk with people and work with people. But that's how to get things in your, not only in your mind, in the back of your mind, but also in your body memory by practicing it, by dancing, right, or playing an instrument.
So before I go into the, I am never comfortable when I pick up the camera. And it's funny because that's one of the things that duChemin addresses in his course, and bring challenges. You know, if you have constraints, that's what it was. If you have constraints, you know, and make constraints for yourself. And I'm sitting there going, I am picking up this camera and I'm trying to take a picture. That's already scary as shit right there. I never feel comfortable. That doesn't mean that I don't feel I'm in the zone and that I don't enjoy it. And yes, it does become a Zen experience, but it's not one of, oh, I've got this and I can. Every time I pick up, it's like, oh my God, will it come out? I don't care. Let me take the picture, right, because I really don't care. And what's really interesting is, and I haven't done this, I don't do this consciously, but so about the learning, a couple of the things like the depth of field. One of the things that's happened to me with the duChemin course is like the depth of field thing. He talks about it, and this is what you need to do. And I'm sitting there going, I've already done this naturally, because I see, in other words, I don't think about, let me try this and this. Usually I will see what I see, think that it's a good, you know what I mean? So there's that.
That exactly is the thing that I never understood, why some people in all sorts of art, there are so-called rules, right? Now, people say this is a photography rule, this is. And so many people that I know, and I did art classes, and I had to talk with had to talk with people. I hate talking with people. I talk with people, and everyone said, like, they always found these rules as restrictive, which I don't see at all. Quite the opposite. These photography rules, these guidelines, there are more guidelines, like any, this is no rule. This is just this is how it's like a ladder. Like it's easier to climb a ladder to get on the roof than climb on like the wall itself. So these rules and guidelines are there to liberate us, to help us to achieve something. And if we know that they exist, then it makes everything much easier. Nobody forces you, at least not for your own photography. If you have an assignment, like we need a photo for the magazine XYZ, and it has to, okay, then it's better to know that rule and to be able to pull that off so that you can sell your photo. But if you work for yourself and you work for, nobody forces you to do anything. And if anyone tells you this is wrong because or this is not good photography because blah blah, I saw that even on Tumblr, and I had to laugh out loud when I read that, someone posting that, seriously posting. At first I thought it was a joke, seriously posting that only photography that follows the rule of thirds is good photography. And I literally spat out my coffee because I had to laugh out loud. And I really thought this is a joke. And I wanted to make a comment, like a sarcastic comment. And then I realized, oh no, they meant that. And so I better not comment on that. And this was the same person who claimed that I don't think they're on Tumblr anymore, but same person. And no, it's not the person you think that I mean. The same person said only uncropped pictures are great photos, which is just plain stupid because with some cameras you can't do that because some cameras don't show you the whole picture, so you have to crop sometimes. But okay, but I have a Canon 5D Mark III, and so I don't know if that is the camera they use, but so it's all just plain BS. There's no reason other than it makes it easier for you to achieve your goal, to use a rule or to not use a rule. And that is the whole secret about rules. I want to do something and I want to have it a certain effect. Then, well, are there rules? How can I pull that off? Of course, I can pick up my telephone and just dial a random number and hope that I will get through to the person that I want to call, or I can use a phone book and say, well, which of these numbers could it be that I can actually reach them? So
yeah, but I have to say, and it goes back to Steffi and the pictures that she took. Sometimes, and that's what I love about photography too, that not knowing. Because here's the thing, and again, not to get Buddhist on this whole thing, but it also goes back to what you were saying about the learning. I don't disagree with you about stuff becoming automatic, but when you learn something new, or you read something like, again, with the depth of field or with the depth in an image and how to use it and blah blah blah, which, by the way, is really interesting because I remember reading somewhere like a year ago that you shouldn't really have the depth of field blur in the front, that you should always try to have it in the back because that in the front is distracting. And yet we see images every so often where that's not the case. It enhances what you're looking, because it attracts attention to what you want the person to see.
That is what I meant by this is liberating. If you know,
yes,
and if you know that in so and so many cases this might be distracting, then play with that, look, check, and this is, but maybe that's the problem, that why many people see these rules. And I'm sorry to the chat that I not always read what you write, but the chat is always visible on
oh dear God,
changed that lately, so all you wrote in the chat will be visible on the YouTube page. In case, I have to say that in case someone is uncomfortable that their chat messages will be visible later on the video on YouTube, then message me, please. I can deactivate that. So if anyone is uncomfortable and I only want the chat to be during the live, absolutely accept that, but message me. I will leave that on in case nobody messages me. Okay. But that having said, that's maybe the thing that and I was the same, right? Someone tells me, and that's when you learn, if there's a teacher who tells you not to do this, do that, and still sometimes when I'm with the camera doing something, and then this voice of a teacher comes, don't do this and this, and jumping over that shadow and saying, no, I do it despite of, I know that there's the rule to not do it, and consciously playing around with that and checking whether it works and seeing how to make it work nevertheless. Then this is where another way how to get out of our comfort zone, because that's where we feel safe within these rules, usually, if we know them, and then saying, okay, maybe I can nudge a bit to the right and see what's behind that door and explore that. So, because why not? And the thing about photography or art in general, and that is, I think, the most important thing that everyone has to understand, is you can't do anything wrong. It's as simple as that. There is no wrong. There's just for certain circumstances not too effective or not effective at all. But it can't be wrong. It's
well, yes and no. I think, and we've talked about this before, there's also, and again, even the whole context thing, I think in the end, what we're trying to do is communicate something and share something. And in the case of people like Picasso, or I was just watching Caravaggio, something about Caravaggio and how he broke out of the mold of the kind of paintings that were produced, religious paintings in the 1700s, I think it was. How you know, there's always the breaking the rule, but you're still building what you're saying, hopefully within a certain vocabulary, so that it is recognizable, because in the end, you might interpret it some other way, but you also might just go, you know what I mean? Because and hold on, and it's almost, it's 12:56. We've talked for 2 hours almost. But I think that's the thing too. But I wanted to add one more thing. Hold on, about the learning and the automatic. And again, not to get too Buddhist, but I think the balance, at least for me, is that yes, stuff becomes automatic, but I still also look at a picture now, which is what I'm getting more into, thanks to duChemin, and the camera, I will say. I'm questioning stuff and I'm looking at stuff, and I don't necessarily think about, oh, this is a rule, blah, blah, blah. Although the one rule I do like to break, and the one rule that I'm fixated with, is the rule about not dividing the visual plane in half. I love doing that, even if it fails most of the time. I love doing that. But even then, that whole idea of something being automatic, yes, but for me, it hopefully will never be fixed, because even new stuff that I learn keeps making me go back and adjust what was automatic. So it's so to me, that state of knowing, not knowing, and always learning is what, again, and thanks to my camera, thanks to my baby, that's what excites me. That's what keeps me interested. Whereas the last 2 times when I picked up an SLR, I never thought about learning. I never thought about anything. I thought you just point and shoot, and I gave up. I was bored. So it's that fluidity, that Buddhist, right, Zen, ungrounded bullhooey.
No, absolutely. But that's what I meant by something being more or less effective. That's yes, what we said with will people understand it or not? That's, can you communicate to an audience? There will be, and this is what every person who ever did anything in any artistic way, when everyone encountered at least once, I encountered and still encounter this a million times, is that there will be an audience who simply doesn't get it, which is okay, and there will be an audience who doesn't like it, which is also okay, and there will be an audience who will like it. So this has nothing whatsoever to do with the quality of your work. This has only to do with how you are able to communicate something, and that is the only thing where we could. And I think I have to explain that in the second part. That's the only thing where we can or could or should, maybe, if we want that, improve. What do I mean? I don't say shoot a crappy picture, and if people don't get it, then you just have to explain to them why this is a good picture. It is our communication is the photo itself already. So if I do things not purposely, that are distracting from the idea that I had. So this is what we talked about a lot in the the photo critiques, there's this object in the frame that's just taking away the focus of, I don't know. I remember that one picture where I think we argued about a stone somewhere in the picture. Was a meadow and there was a stone, and you said, well, I would have cloned that out because I find it distracting. And this is learning to see these things in photos that might be distracting, like a skewed horizon line. And that's one of these tricks, dirty tricks, that one of my art teachers told me, is that you will get away with everything as long as it looks like as if it was done on purpose. But it sounds like a dirty trick, but actually it isn't, because if you have in mind that things have to look like as if they were done on purpose, then you will do them on purpose. And then you can at least argue, I did that because. That still doesn't mean that everyone will like it. And there were still people who say, I don't like it at all, it distracts me. But that is also the learning process. And it's super hard for some people. It was for me, definitely in the beginning, not with photography, because thank God I was quite old when I really started photography. But with other things, to learn to deal with critique and not be personally hurt that someone doesn't like what I do. And that took a bit until I realized if someone doesn't like what I do, that doesn't automatically mean that they don't like me. Because, wow, if you confuse what I do in art with who I am, then it's your problem, not mine. And even though now I'm, thank God, in a position that I say, I don't even have a problem if you don't like me, because you don't have to like me, just as I don't have to like you. And if we can get along even if we don't like each other, and that is totally fine.
We get along and don't like each other.
Right, we don't get along, but we don't like each other.
We don't like each other.
We're an exception. Still do this stuff together. But
nobody else will talk to us.
That's the ego, right? Yeah, nobody else will talk with us. As we can see in this video, because we had this open invitation for everyone to join in, and nobody wants to talk with us.
Nobody wants to join.
More screen time for me.
Anyway, 2 hours, dude.
2 hours.
I need to go to the bathroom. I know you're wearing a diaper, so you've been pissing in your diaper all this time.
Can we just let's talk one moment about diapers? No, let's not talk about diapers. Let's just stand.
Not at my age.
Let's just stand up for a moment. I wear pants. Fern doesn't.
I do. I'm wearing shorts.
Yeah, shorts.
Shorts. Yeah, they're shorts. Yeah, they're
Look
big and
like
baggy. This is what I've lost weight, so these are my extra large. So yes, and they were large back then too. So yes. Why? What's your point? I need to go to the bathroom.
Right. Let me just check the chat again. I'm sorry if I don't read everything on the chat. What did we miss? We missed a lot. Sharon wrote, no, Christian wrote, I think that there are paintings and pictures that do work out of context on an aesthetic level, but I have no idea how I should put this. Yes, but I think that's because we are many things work automatically. Like, I mean, all these composition rules are not someone sat down and said, okay, I will write a couple of composition rules that everyone has to follow. These things they were discovered as things they work, and I think so. That's to answer that shortly. Sharon wrote, a good photo for me is something that evokes some kind of emotion in me. I know squat about technicality, so don't care how you achieved it. It makes me react. If it makes me react, then it's good or great or magnificent. Christian agrees. Yes, exactly. He agrees with the guidelines and not rules. They're guidelines, not rules. Sleepwalkers Union, hello on the chat. Sleepwalkers Union writes, exactly, there is an innate psychology to photography, a way to tell stories subconsciously. Absolutely. This is one way, and this is, well, what I sometimes try to do. Absolutely agree. Christian writes, I don't think that it's always storytelling. There are images without story that work nonetheless. Well, it's a question. What is a story? I mean, what happens in your head? But yes, I also agree that it doesn't have to be, but it's often storytelling. But Sleepwalkers Union didn't write anything else. It's often storytelling. Sleepwalkers Union writes, interesting to me, there's always a story, not specifically journalism, but even an abstract painting can provoke an emotional journey. Yeah, what is a story? That we could talk about that one day. What is a story in photos? Interesting.
Well, if we honestly, if we do that, I will have very little to say, and I'll tell you why. Because that was one of duChemin's subjects for his chapters, and I rarely have a story to tell. Even when I do a portrait, it's about that moment and about. So to me, the whole concept of story just my brain freezes because again, I don't have that kind of imagination.
There's a question. What is a story? If we talk about stories in a traditional sense, with beginning, middle, end, and catharsis at the end. So maybe
Yes.
not. But what is the
okay? I have to go to the bathroom. We have to end. But I will tell you one thing I learned a long time ago about writing and stories. 2 + 2 is 4 is a story. You have
Think
2,
about
and you add 2, you get 4. That is a story. That is a story. So the concept of story isn't our. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but
Okay, hurry up and finish this. I'm pissing my pants.
Don't interrupt.
Okay,
I want to read.
and I am not going to go to the bathroom and come back. It's 2 hours.
I will leave out your comments on the chat. Sleepwalkers Union, yes, exactly. That is where an artist's understanding about the subconscious tricks to creating these triggers can be beneficial. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And Christian says, yes, go for what is a story next time. I hope I can attend or find out beforehand. So yeah, we will think about that. Maybe I could, if you're not comfortable with doing that, Fern, this could be.
Oh no, we can do it.
We can do that. I would love.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, no, I don't care.
I have to do some preparation before that. So okay, Fern has to go to the bathroom. I have to.
We have talked for 2 hours.
Water. We have talked for 2 hours. Thank you all very much. It was a pleasure, and it was so much fun. And we will try to get back into the groove of doing this a bit more frequently. But a lot of things have happened in the last month. So again, thank you all.
Oh, and if any of them, if the people in chat, if they want to join us and be part of the discussion on like live in the video conversation or even just audio, please. We haven't had a guest for a while. And I thought of one, and there's a couple of others that I'd like to do, but I think it would be great to have somebody else to talk to besides Pete.
Absolutely, and that without our, that's also some we actually do like each other, even if we don't want to admit that. Okay, that was
no conversation today after.
So thank you all, and please, really, it is fun to bite, and if you are not, which we of course understand, if you're not comfortable with showing your face, we can do that audio only. It would be nice to see you, of course, but yeah, this was for today. Bye bye, till next time, and I'll stop the streaming.